I never truly imagined my own parents, Carol and Robert, would one day look me metaphorically in the eye and tell me my children weren't welcome in their home. Yet, there I stood in my bright Portland kitchen, staring at my phone in stunned disbelief. Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away, and my mom's voice over the phone had been unusually light, almost cheerful as she started the conversation. "Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." For a fleeting moment, my heart warmed. Despite the persistent undercurrent of tension that had defined our relationship for years, I still held on to a foolish longing for these family traditions, these moments of connection. My kids, 7-year-old Chloe and 4-year-old Noah, adored their grandparents, blissfully unaware of the subtle, and sometimes not-so-subtle, favoritism that had always existed. "Of course, Mom. What's the plan?" I asked, already picturing their familiar house, filled with the comforting aromas of roasted turkey and cinnamon, the low hum of conversation, the illusion of a warm family gathering. There was a brief pause on the line, just a beat too long, sending an unexpected chill down my spine. "Well," Mom continued, clearing her throat slightly, "this year we're doing things a little differently. It's going to be a smaller dinner, just adults, something more intimate." I frowned. "Oh, so no kids at all this year?" Another pause, this one heavier, more hesitant. "Well, no, not exactly." A cold knot began twisting in my stomach. "What do you mean, Mom?" She let out a put-upon sigh, as if I were the one putting her in an uncomfortable position. If you've ever felt like the less favored child, hit subscribe on Life Stories. Let's navigate these tricky family dynamics together. "Megan, darling," my mother Carol began, her voice laced with that familiar tone of strained patience she always used when explaining something she considered obvious. "We absolutely love your children. We really do. Chloe and Noah are sweet, but—" She paused, searching for the right diplomatic, yet wounding word. "They're just a bit, energetic. And honestly, Robert and I just feel it would be a more peaceful, relaxing evening if you perhaps left them with a sitter this year, just for this one dinner." I gripped the edge of the granite countertop, my knuckles turning white. Energetic. That was the code word, the polite euphemism for not as perfectly behaved as Mark's kids. "So," I managed, keeping my voice carefully level, "just my kids are excluded? What about Mark's boys? Are Ethan and Owen not coming either?" Mark, my older brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, even when his business ventures failed, quietly bailed out by Dad, or when he conveniently forgot Mom's birthday, covered for by me. Mom hesitated again, and in that hesitation, I knew the answer before she even spoke it. "Well, Mark and Jessica are coming, and they're bringing Ethan and Owen, yes," she finally admitted, her voice dropping slightly, perhaps anticipating my reaction. "But Megan, you know how well-behaved those boys are. They're just quieter, more refined. It's simply easier to have them at the adult table." A wave of heat flushed through my entire body. It felt like a physical slap, like the floor had abruptly vanished beneath my feet. Easier, quieter, more refined. My children, my bright, funny, loving children, reduced to an inconvenience, deemed unworthy because they laughed too loudly or couldn't sit perfectly still for hours. "They're children, Mom," I choked out, my voice tight with disbelief and rising anger. "Chloe is 7. Noah is 4. Of course they have energy, but they're sweet kids. They adore you and Dad. They behave reasonably well for their ages." "We're just trying to have a peaceful adult evening, Megan," Mom replied, her tone becoming clipped now, annoyance replacing the forced pleasantness. She was clearly irritated that I wasn't simply accepting this blatant discrimination with quiet gratitude for being invited myself. "It's not personal." "Not personal?" I clenched my jaw, swallowing back the torrent of sharp, wounded words threatening to spill out. This wasn't just about one Thanksgiving dinner. It was about everything. It was about the lifetime of subtle and overt comparisons, the way they meticulously attended every single one of Ethan's school plays or Owen's t-ball games, yet somehow always had a prior commitment or were too tired to come to Chloe's dance recitals or Noah's preschool sing-alongs. The way Christmas and birthday gifts for Mark's boys were always slightly more extravagant, slightly more thoughtful than the generic gift cards my kids received. The constant praise heaped upon Ethan and Owen for their good manners, while my children's normal childhood exuberance was met with tight smiles and pointed remarks about discipline, and now they weren't even bothering to hide the blatant favoritism anymore. They were stating it outright. Mark's children were preferable. Mine were not welcome. I can't believe this, I whispered, the full weight of their rejection finally hitting me. You're actually telling me that my children, your own grandchildren, aren't welcome at your Thanksgiving dinner, but Mark's children are? Oh, Megan, don't be so dramatic, Mom sighed wearily, falling back on her standard dismissal tactic. Honestly, this reaction is exactly why these things become difficult. It's just one dinner. You and Ben are still invited, of course. We'd love to see you both. I almost laughed aloud at the sheer, breathtaking absurdity of it. They wanted us there, but not the two small humans who constituted the very center of our world. They expected us to happily show up, partake in their peaceful adult dinner, while our children sat at home with a sitter, knowing they'd been deliberately excluded, deemed unworthy of their grandparents' table. What kind of parents did they think we were? I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat. No, Mom, I said, my voice surprisingly firm, the decision solidifying with absolute certainty in that instant. No. If my children aren't welcome, then neither are Ben and I. A long, stunned silence stretched between us. I could almost hear her processing my refusal, the shock that I wasn't capitulating as usual. Then she exhaled sharply, a sound of pure exasperation, as if I were the one being unreasonable, irrational, difficult. Suit yourself, Megan, she snapped coldly, and just like that, she hung up. I stood there in the sudden silence, staring at the dead phone, my breath coming in unsteady gasps. From the living room, I could hear Chloe and Noah dissolving into giggles as their elaborate pillow fort inevitably collapsed. They were so close, yet utterly oblivious to the fact that their beloved grandparents, the ones they drew pictures for and chattered excitedly about visiting, had just casually cast them aside like inconvenient baggage, unworthy of a place at the family table, simply because they were children. I took a deep, shaky breath, my mind racing. I had spent my entire adult life walking on eggshells around my parents, desperately trying to please them, trying to earn their approval, their equal affection. Trying to pretend the favoritism towards Mark wasn't real, wasn't hurtful. But at what cost? At the cost of my own self-respect? And now, at the cost of my children's sense of belonging? If I let them get away with this, if I accepted their conditional invitation while leaving my children behind, knowing they weren't good enough, what kind of mother would that make me? What message would that send to Chloe and Noah about their own worth? No. Not anymore. They had drawn their line in the sand. They had made their choice, prioritizing their comfort and their preference for Mark's easier children over fairness, over family, over the feelings of my innocent kids. Now, it was time for me to make mine. And somehow, standing there amidst the wreckage of my lifelong illusions about my family, I had a feeling they were going to regret their choice far sooner, and far more profoundly than they could possibly imagine. The weight of my mother's casual cruelty lingered long after the phone call ended. I stood frozen in my kitchen for several minutes, the quiet hum of the refrigerator amplifying the turmoil inside me. My phone, still clutched tightly, felt heavy in my hand. My fingers trembled as I finally set it down on the counter. Anger warred with a deep, aching sadness. All these years, I had known, on some level, that my parents favored Mark. The golden boy, the firstborn son. But I had always made excuses for them, minimized the differences in treatment, convinced myself that maybe I was being too sensitive, that deep down, they loved me and my children just as much. Tonight, Carol had ruthlessly stripped away that comforting illusion. We love your kids, but it's easier to have Mark's boys. The implication was brutal and clear. My children were a burden, an inconvenience, less desirable than their cousins. A sudden burst of carefree laughter echoed from the living room. I turned, seeing Chloe, my bright, imaginative 7-year-old, and Noah, my sweet, boisterous 4-year-old, emerging triumphantly from the ruins of their pillow fort, completely oblivious. My chest tightened protectively. They deserved grandparents who cherished their energy, who celebrated their milestones, who didn't see them as second best. They deserved better than Carol and Robert. Squaring my shoulders, I forced a smile and walked into the living room, determined not to let my turmoil cast a shadow over their innocent joy. "All right, you two pillow monsters," I said, my voice deliberately light and cheerful, steadier than I felt inside. "Who's ready for a super special movie night with extra popcorn?" Noah immediately perked up, his eyes wide. "Can we watch the one with the talking dog again, Mommy?" "Of course we can, buddy." I scooped him up into a hug, burying my face in his soft curls, inhaling his familiar little boy scent. As we all curled up on the couch together under a mountain of blankets, the familiar opening credits of the movie playing, the righteous anger inside me refused to settle. It simmered, morphing into a cold, hard resolve. I had spent 32 years trying to contort myself into the daughter they seemed to want, playing by their unspoken rules, hoping that enough good grades, enough responsible behavior, enough helpfulness would finally earn me equal footing with Mark. It had never been enough, and I was finally, irrevocably done trying. The next morning, inevitably, my phone pinged with a text message. It was Mark. "Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Seriously, Megan? Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Of course, Carol had already run to him, painting me as the unreasonable one. I typed back immediately, my thumbs flying across the screen. "Oh, so she told you she specifically uninvited my kids from Thanksgiving while specifically inviting yours? Did she mention that part?" The typing bubbles appeared on his end, then stopped abruptly. A full minute passed in silence before his reply came through, dripping with annoyance. "She just wants a calm dinner, Megan. Be realistic. You know Chloe and Noah can be a lot. Like they were defective, like their normal childhood energy was a character flaw, like they were a burden to be endured, not grandchildren to be cherished. Something inside me didn't just snap this time, it severed. Enjoy your perfect, calm Thanksgiving, Mark." I typed back, my voice cold. "Ben and I won't be there." I switched off my phone completely before he could respond, tossing it onto the kitchen counter. They didn't want me or my children at their precious, refined table? Fine. Then they wouldn't have us in their lives at all, and they were about to discover just how much they had taken my presence, my helpfulness, for granted. For years, I had been the default fixer in the family, the reliable daughter, the one they called whenever they needed something, while Mark remained blissfully uninvolved, but perpetually praised. Dad's Wi-Fi router mysteriously stopped working. "Call Megan, she's good with that tech stuff. Mom needed someone to pick up her dry cleaning and groceries because she was too busy planning her garden club luncheon. Call Megan, she drives right past the store on her way home from work. Help needed organizing the annual summer barbecue, coordinating RSVPs, setting up tables. Call Megan, she's so organized." Mark? Oh, he was far too busy with his important, though vaguely defined, business dealings. He'd swoop in for the event itself, charm everyone for an hour, accept accolades for simply showing up, and leave early. I'd resented the imbalance for years, but had always pushed it down, telling myself it wasn't worth the fight, that helping family was just what you did. But if I wasn't truly part of their preferred inner circle, if my children weren't worthy of inclusion, then the quid pro quo was over. The free support system was officially closed for business. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called again. I debated letting it go to voicemail, then sighed and answered, steeling myself. "Hello?" "Megan," Carol said, her tone cautious, testing the waters. "I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I know you were upset last week, but I really hope you'll reconsider coming on Thursday. We would love to have you and Ben there. Still just me and Ben, not the kids. The omission hung in the air, deliberate and insulting. I took a deep breath. I meant what I said, Mom. If Chloe and Noah aren't welcome, then neither are we. That hasn't changed. She sighed heavily, the sound full of martyrdom. I just don't understand why you insist on being so stubborn about this, Megan. It's just one night. You know how much Mark's boys mean to us? How much easier? Easier. There it was again. The final painful confirmation that my children, the two little humans who held my entire heart, would always be measured against their cousins and found wanting in their grandparents' eyes. I clenched my jaw. You've made it perfectly clear where we stand, Mom, I said quietly. I won't bother you again. Megan, don't be like this. Don't hang... I ended the call before she could finish her guilt-laden plea. And this time, surprisingly, I didn't feel tears welling up. I just felt numb, resigned, and strangely, powerfully, resolute. I started small. That weekend, when my dad called, presumably wanting help setting up the new smart TV he'd bought himself, I saw his name flash on the screen and simply let the call go to voicemail. A few hours later, my mom sent a text asking if I could pick up her prescription refill on my way home Monday. I read the text and left it unanswered. For years, I had been at their beck and call, rearranging my schedule, always available, always reliable. Not anymore. It didn't take long for them to notice the shift. By the time Thanksgiving week rolled around, my call log showed a total of 12 missed calls from their numbers, and my inbox held 6 ignored text messages requesting various small favors or vaguely asking if everything was okay. They were used to immediate responses, immediate compliance. My silence was clearly unsettling them. Then, on Thanksgiving morning itself, as Ben and I were happily making pancakes with the kids, my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. Mom and Dad are really upset that you're ignoring them. Are you seriously going to let this stupid argument go this far? Ruin the holiday? I typed back swiftly. It already went too far when they told me my kids weren't welcome. This isn't an argument, it's a consequence. This time, he didn't reply. I put my phone on silent mode and turned my full attention back to my real family, to Ben, laughing as Noah tried to steal a piece of bacon, to Chloe, carefully arranging blueberries into a smiley face on her pancake stack. Flour dusted their noses, syrup dotted the table, laughter filled our cozy kitchen. This was our Thanksgiving. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt completely, utterly at peace. No underlying tension, no need to perform, no desperate hope for approval that never came. Just us. But even amidst the newfound tranquility, a small part of me suspected this wasn't over. My parents, particularly my mother, weren't accustomed to losing control. And their next move, driven by something far more tangible than hurt feelings, would prove just how far they were willing to go, and reveal a level of entitlement I could never have fathomed. Thanksgiving morning unfolded with a calm, joyful simplicity I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. There was no frantic rush to get the kids wrestled into uncomfortable, nice outfits. No passive-aggressive comments from my mother about the side dish I brought being interesting. No forced small talk with relatives while keeping one anxious eye on my kids to ensure they didn't accidentally spill something on Carol's pristine white carpet. Instead, our Portland home was filled with the genuine sounds of family, the sizzle of pancakes on the griddle, the kids' infectious giggles, the murmur of cartoons playing softly in the background, Ben humming off-key as he brewed coffee. We ate pancakes piled high with fruit and whipped cream, built an epic fort in the living room, and planned a lazy afternoon of movies and board games. It felt right, peaceful, free. Then, inevitably, my phone, still on silent, lit up on the kitchen counter. Caller ID. Mum. I ignored it. A minute later, it lit up again. Ignored. And again. Ben caught my eye, raising an eyebrow with a concerned look. Want me to just turn it off completely? He asked quietly. I hesitated. What if it was a genuine emergency? Despite everything, a sliver of that ingrained responsible daughter duty remained. No, it's okay, I sighed. If it's actually urgent, I should probably at least know. I picked up the phone on the fourth ring, bracing myself, keeping my voice deliberately flat. What is it, Mom? Oh? Now you decide to pick up. She huffed immediately, skipping any pretense of holiday cheer. I suppose you're just sitting over there feeling sorry for yourself while the rest of us are here trying to enjoy a lovely family dinner. I closed my eyes briefly, pinching the bridge of my nose. Mom, if you called just to gloat or try to guilt-trip me, I really don't have time for this today. That's not why I called. Her voice turned sharp, demanding. I need to ask you something important. What now? I asked wearily. Did you... She paused, her tone laced with accusation. Did you cancel the credit card? The room suddenly felt very still. I turned away from Ben and the kids, lowering my voice instinctively. What are you talking about? What credit card? Your father's credit card, she snapped impatiently. The emergency one, the one we've been using occasionally for groceries, gas, essential things. He tried to use it this morning at the supermarket, and it was declined. Embarrassing. A slow, icy realization crept up my spine, chilling me far more effectively than any fictional ice storm. The credit card she was talking about, it wasn't Dad's, it was mine. Years ago, probably 5 or 6, back when Dad had his surgery and was out of work for months, money had been incredibly tight for them. As a temporary measure, just to help them bridge the gap for essentials until they got back on their feet, I had reluctantly added both Mom and Dad as authorized users onto one of my secondary credit card accounts. It was meant to be short-term. I had fully intended to remove them once their financial situation stabilized. But life got busy, the immediate crisis passed. I got promotions, Ben and I bought our house, had the kids, and I honestly, stupidly, forgot all about it. And clearly, they had never reminded me, nor had they stopped using it. I clenched my jaw, my voice dangerously quiet. Mom, are you talking about my Visa card? The one I added you to years ago? There was a telling pause. Then Mom scoffed dismissively. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Megan. It's just a card. You make good money now. We figured you wouldn't even notice. It's hardly a big deal. Hardly a big deal? My voice started shaking, not with sadness this time, but with pure, unadulterated rage. You figured? You figured what, Mom? That you could just keep using my money indefinitely, without my explicit permission, racking up charges on my account? That I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care? Oh, honestly, Megan, don't act like this is some grand betrayal, she retorted defensively. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. The least you could do is offer a little support now that you're successful. It's what family does. I inhaled sharply, the audacity leaving me breathless. Are you serious right now? Are you actually hearing yourself? After telling me just last week that my own children weren't good enough for your Thanksgiving table, you still expected me to keep paying for your groceries? You see no disconnect there? Mom let out a long, dramatic put-upon sigh. You know what, Megan? This is exactly why we sometimes hesitate to have difficult conversations with you. You always overreact. You always make things personal. Overreact? That was it. The final shred of lingering obligation, of familial duty, dissolved. I was done. Completely, utterly done. You're right about one thing, Mom, I said, my voice suddenly calm, cold, devoid of emotion. I did cancel the card, this morning in fact, after I finally remembered you were still on it. Effective immediately. You what? She gasped, shocked. And since we're having honest conversations now, I continued relentlessly, let me make something else crystal clear. You won't see another cent from me. Ever. No more help, no more covering your expenses, no more financial support whatsoever. Mom gasped again, sputtering, Megan, don't be ridiculous. You can't. And while we're at it, I cut her off, the words flowing freely now, fueled by years of suppressed resentment. Don't expect Christmas gifts this year, or birthday gifts, or anything else. You made your choice very clear when you told me my children weren't welcome. And now, I stated with chilling finality, I'm making mine. There was a moment of stunned silence on her end. Then, in a voice colder and harder than I had ever heard from her, she hissed, "You will regret this, Megan. Mark my words." And then she hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, phone pressed hard against my ear, gripping it so tightly my fingers ached. The silence in my own kitchen felt profound. Then, slowly, deliberately, I lowered the phone. I turned back towards the living room, where Ben was watching me carefully, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I forced a small smile, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, how calm I felt inside, despite the seismic shift that had just occurred. "Yeah," I said truthfully. "Everything's fine. Just taking out the trash." He didn't ask any more questions. We spent the rest of the day wrapped in our own peaceful Thanksgiving bubble, watching movies, baking cookies that the kids decorated with more sprinkles than frosting, playing silly board games. And for the first time in my adult life, the holiday wasn't overshadowed by unspoken tensions, by the pressure to perform, by the need to walk on eggshells or navigate my mother's moods. It was just ours. Simple, happy, uncomplicated. But even amidst the newfound peace, a small voice warned me, this wasn't truly over. My parents, having relied on my financial support far more than I realized, weren't just going to accept being cut off. Their sense of entitlement, their need for control, ran too deep. And their next move, I suspected, would prove exactly what kind of people they really were when their comfort and perceived authority were threatened. The silence from my parents in the days immediately following Thanksgiving was unnerving, but not entirely unexpected. I knew my mother, Carol, wouldn't take the financial cutoff lying down. 3 days later, my phone lit up. Caller ID, Mark, my brother. I debated ignoring it, then sighed and answered, bracing myself for the inevitable guilt trip. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked wearily. "What the hell, Megan?" he snapped immediately, skipping any pretense of greeting. "Mom just called me, absolutely hysterical, saying you cut them off completely, canceled the credit card they rely on. What is wrong with you?" I closed my eyes briefly, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Here we go." "Did Mom also happen to mention," I countered calmly, "that the credit card they rely on is actually mine, and that they've apparently been using it regularly for years, long after the temporary help I offered ended, without my explicit knowledge or permission?" There was a pause on his end. "Well," he stammered slightly, clearly caught off guard. She said you were helping them out." "Helping them out?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Mark, based on a quick look at the statements online, they've racked up thousands of dollars on my account over time. Groceries, gas, who knows what else. All while treating my children like they're second-class citizens. But sure, let's focus on me being the bad guy here for finally putting a stop to it." He sighed heavily, clearly trying to regain control of the conversation, shifting into his familiar, reasonable older brother mode. "Look, Megan, I get that you're mad about the Thanksgiving thing, okay? Maybe Mom handled it badly, but cutting them off completely financially? That seems extreme. They're our parents. You mean the way they completely excluded my children from a major family holiday was extreme?" I shot back, my voice sharp. "They just wanted a peaceful evening, Megan," he protested, echoing Mom's excuse. "Mom said your kids can be a little wild sometimes." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles were white. Wild, my sweet Chloe and Noah. "Oh, I see," I replied, my voice dangerously low. "So, it's perfectly acceptable for them to use my money to fund their lifestyle, but my children aren't good enough to sit at their table because they might laugh too loud? Got it. Thanks for clarifying the family values, Mark." He groaned in frustration. "You're deliberately twisting this." "No, Mark," I stated firmly. "I'm finally seeing it for exactly what it is. Years of entitlement, favoritism, and manipulation. And I'm done enabling it." There was a long pause. Then, his voice turned calculating, wheedling. "Look, okay, Maybe Mom and Dad messed up with Thanksgiving, but they're getting older. Things are tight for them again. Maybe we can work something out? What if you just kept helping them out a bit? Maybe set up a smaller, regular monthly transfer, just to help with basics. That way, he added soothingly, no one has to suffer just because of a misunderstanding. A cold, disbelieving laugh bubbled up in my throat. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Mark. You want me, I emphasized the word, to continue sending our parents money after they explicitly told me, to my face, that they prefer your children and don't want my children at their family gathering? Well, they didn't mean it exactly like that, he grumbled weakly. They said it, Mark, I cut him off. They were perfectly clear. He had no response for that. After another moment of tense silence, his voice turned stiff, resentful. Fine, Megan. If you want to be selfish and hold a grudge, that's on you. But don't come crying to me when Mom and Dad refuse to forgive you for this. I smirked, shaking my head at the sheer audacity. Don't worry, Mark, I replied coolly. I'll survive. Then, before he could argue further, I hung up. For the next few weeks leading up to Christmas, my parents maintained their wounded silence. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation, feigned or otherwise. I figured they were employing the silent treatment, their go-to tactic, hoping I'd eventually cave under the weight of guilt and come crawling back, begging for their approval and reinstating their allowance, just like I always had before. But what they fundamentally failed to grasp was that this time was different. I was different. For the first time in my life, their approval held zero value. Their silence wasn't a punishment, it was a relief. And just when I started to think, maybe, just maybe, they'd finally accepted the new reality, they pulled their final, most desperate, most ludicrous stunt. It was the week before Christmas. Ben brought in the mail, his brow furrowing as he sorted through the envelopes. Megan? He said, holding up a thick, official-looking envelope. This is from your parents' lawyer. I stiffened. A lawyer? Seriously? Oh, great, I muttered. Let me guess. Guilt trip? Manipulation? Or straight-up gaslighting? Professionally drafted this time? Ben smirked grimly. Why don't we find out? My stomach twisted nervously as I tore open the envelope. Inside wasn't a personal letter, but a formal, legal-looking document. My breath caught in my throat as I scanned the typed words. They were demanding reimbursement. Reimbursement for decades of alleged emotional and financial support provided during my childhood and adolescence. I let out a sharp, disbelieving bark of laughter. You have got to be kidding me! Ben took the letter, his eyes widening as he read. They're saying you owe them for raising you? For financial sacrifices made for your well-being? He looked up, his jaw tightening in anger on my behalf. Are they actually trying to bill you for your own childhood? Apparently, yes. They had even included a ridiculously itemized list of estimated costs: food, clothing, school supplies, routine medical expenses, stretching back over 20 years. And at the bottom of the final page, a grand total, presented with chilling seriousness, $78,542.37. I blinked, staring at the number. Nearly $80,000. They seriously thought, after everything, that I owed them money? They must be absolutely desperate, Ben scoffed, shaking his head. I exhaled slowly, the initial shock giving way to a familiar, burning anger. This wasn't really about money, not directly. This was about control. This was about intimidation. This was their final, pathetic, manipulative attempt to regain leverage, to pull me back into their toxic orbit by threatening legal action they likely knew was baseless. I looked at Ben, my mind instantly made up. Okay, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I think it's time I pay my dear parents one last little visit. The next day, clutching the demand letter, I drove to my parents' immaculate suburban house. I knocked firmly on the door. Mom opened it, her face immediately hardening into a familiar mask of disapproval when she saw it was me. Oh, she sniffed. So now you decide to show up. I didn't rise to the bait. I held up the letter. This? I asked incredulously. You seriously thought this pathetic stunt would work? She folded her arms defensively across her chest. It's what's fair, Megan. We sacrificed a lot for you. I let out another sharp laugh. Fair? You think it's fair to charge me for my own upbringing while simultaneously expecting me to provide you with free money for the rest of your lives? Make it make sense, Mom. Dad appeared in the doorway behind her then, his expression smug, playing the role of the injured patriarch. We made sacrifices, Megan, he declared pompously. And now you're abandoning us in our time of need. I stared at them both, shaking my head slowly, the last vestiges of filial obligation finally dissolving. No, Dad, I corrected him calmly. You abandoned me. You abandoned me when you made it crystal clear my children weren't good enough for you. You abandoned me when you lied about Thanksgiving. You abandoned me when you secretly used my credit card for years. You abandoned me when you put a price tag on my worth as a daughter. Mom's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Well, if you don't intend to pay what you owe, then I suppose we'll just have to involve our lawyers further. I met her threatening gaze unflinchingly. Go ahead, I challenged her softly. She blinked, surprised by my lack of fear. What? I said, go ahead, I repeated, crossing my arms. Take me to court, please. Try to explain to a judge, under oath, why you believe you're entitled to sue your own daughter for routine parental expenses incurred 20 years ago, especially after I present evidence of your recent financial dependence on me and your deliberate exclusion of my children. Let's see how well that plays out for you. Silence. For the first time, they looked genuinely unsure, a flicker of panic replacing the smug entitlement. Dad cleared his throat nervously. We just thought you'd want to make things right, Megan. I laughed again, the sound sharp and final. Oh, I am making things right. And with deliberate theatricality, I ripped their demand letter cleanly in half, then in half again, letting the pieces flutter to their pristine welcome mat. I watched their eyes widen in shock and impotent fury. I am done, I stated clearly. Being your retirement plan, your personal ATM, your on-call servant. Mom gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. You ungrateful little... I didn't wait to hear the rest. I turned on my heel. Merry Christmas, I called back over my shoulder, striding purposefully back to my car. And for the first time in my entire life, driving away from them, I felt utterly, completely, gloriously light. They weren't upset about the money, I realized. They were furious because, finally, irrevocably, I held all the power. And I wasn't ever giving it back. I genuinely thought ripping up their absurd demand letter would be the end of it. That, faced with the ridiculousness of their claim and my utter refusal to be intimidated, my parents, Carol and Robert, would finally accept defeat, retreat into their self-pity, and leave us alone. Perhaps, naively, I hoped they might even sit in the wreckage of their own making and feel a shred of remorse for driving their daughter and grandchildren away. But people like my parents, steeped in decades of entitlement and masters of manipulation, don't operate on logic or remorse. They operate on control, and when their attempt to regain financial control failed, they escalated to the next level, emotional blackmail, weaponizing the very grandchildren they had deemed unworthy. It started small, insidiously, 2 days before Christmas. A text message from Mom popped up. Megan, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a silly argument. I read it, scoffed, and deleted it without replying. The next day, Christmas Eve morning, another message arrived. We forgive you, darling. Please, just come to Christmas dinner tomorrow. Bring Ben. We can forget this whole unfortunate business ever happened. They forgive me? The audacity was breathtaking. I deleted it again. A few hours later, my brother Mark chimed in, clearly prompted by Mom. They're really hurting, Megan. Seriously. Just apologize so we can all move on and have a normal holiday. Normal? Nothing about their behavior was normal. I rolled my eyes and typed back a curt response. Funny, they weren't hurting when they were stealing from my bank account via my credit card, or when they told me my kids weren't welcome because they preferred yours. I think they'll survive. I hit send and then promptly blocked Mark's number 2. I was done playing mediator to his enabling behavior. Christmas Eve unfolded peacefully in our home. Ben and I had just finished decorating the tree, the scent of pine filling the air. Chloe and Noah, buzzing with excitement in their festive pajamas, were dancing around the living room to carols, far too wound up to even think about sleep. It felt warm, happy, exactly what Christmas should be. And then, the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. Ben and I exchanged a wary look. "No way," he muttered under his breath. My stomach plummeted. I walked cautiously to the door, peered through the peephole, and my heart sank. Sure enough, standing on our festively lit porch were Mom and Dad, bundled in scarves, holding a massive, elaborately wrapped gift box between them. An ambush. I sighed, mentally bracing myself, and opened the door just a crack. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. Mom's face immediately lit up with a bright, forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," she chirped. Dad awkwardly held out the enormous gift box. "For the kids," he mumbled. I folded my arms, blocking the doorway. "No, thank you." Mom's smile wavered. "Megan, don't be stubborn now. It's Christmas Eve. Let's not ruin the holiday over this misunderstanding." "You already ruined the holiday," I shot back, my voice low but firm, "when you explicitly told me my children weren't good enough for your Thanksgiving table. Remember that?" Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. Dad sighed heavily. "Come on, Megan," he pleaded, trying a different tactic. "Let's just be a family again." I stared at them both, standing there on my porch, trying to barge back into our lives with a gift as a Trojan horse, and all I felt was exhaustion. "You don't want to be a family," I said quietly, the truth settling heavy and final. "You want me to go back to being useful, to playing my role, to funding your lifestyle and accepting your crumbs of affection. That's not family." Their silence was damning. I shook my head slowly. "Take your gift," I said, my voice gaining strength, "and please leave." Mom's expression hardened instantly. "Megan Annabelle, don't you dare be selfish. Think about the children. They deserve grandparents." I met her glare with a cold smile. "Oh, I'm thinking about the children, Mom. That's exactly why you are no longer in their lives. They deserve better than conditional love and blatant favoritism." Dad's jaw tightened. "You really want to do this, Megan? Cut us off completely?" I exhaled, a long, slow breath, releasing the last vestiges of obligation. "I already did." And with that, I gently but firmly shut the door in their stunned faces, locking the deadbolt for good measure. That night, we had the best Christmas Eve ever. Chloe and Noah eventually crashed on the couch amidst a sea of wrapping paper remnants, exhausted but happy. Ben and I stayed up late, sipping wine by the twinkling tree lights, talking quietly, finally feeling free from the weight of impending family drama. Christmas Day was equally peaceful, filled with laughter, games, and genuine warmth, the kind that doesn't come with conditions or require earning. It wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was simply about us, my real family, my chosen family. But I had underestimated my parents' capacity for vindictive desperation. They couldn't control me financially anymore. They couldn't guilt me emotionally. So, they decided to play their final, ugliest card. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a celebration, a symbolic shedding of the past year's toxicity, a hopeful step into a better future. We had invited a few close friends over, neighbors Ben and I genuinely liked. The house was filled with music and laughter again, snacks laid out, champagne chilling. Chloe and Noah, allowed to stay up late, were running around in their little party hats, giddy with excitement. And then another knock at the door. Sharper this time. Insistent. My stomach twisted instantly. Ben glanced at me, his expression grim. "You think?" "I know," I whispered back. Taking a deep breath, steeling myself, I walked to the door and opened it. There they stood, Mom, Dad, Mark, and even Mark's wife, Jessica, looking uncomfortable but clearly dragged along for reinforcement. A united front of manipulation. An ambush, round 3. I crossed my arms, barring their entry. "What do you want now?" Mom plastered on that sickly sweet smile again. "Megan, darling, we just want to talk. Reasonably." "No thanks," I said flatly. "We're busy." Dad stepped forward, puffing out his chest slightly. "Megan, enough is enough. You've made your point. Now it's time to fix this before things go too far." I narrowed my eyes. "Too far? What exactly does that mean, Dad?" Mom exchanged a significant look with Mark. We don't want this unfortunate situation," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "to negatively affect the children." Something in her tone, a veiled threat beneath the syrupy sweetness, made my skin crawl. "What are you talking about?" Mark stepped forward then, arms crossed over his chest, adopting a posture of aggrieved authority. "Mom and Dad have been consulting with an attorney, Megan." A cold wave of dread washed over me, stealing my breath. "An attorney?" I repeated slowly, numbly. Mom nodded, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing mixture of false sympathy and vindictive triumph. "We're just worried about Chloe and Noah, darling. You've cut them off completely from their loving grandparents, their only biological grandparents on this side, purely out of spite. We don't think that's fair to them. That's not healthy." My pulse began pounding in my ears. "What?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Are you trying to say?" Dad cleared his throat, delivering the pre-rehearsed line. "We've been looking into grandparents' rights." For a split second, the world tilted. Grandparents' rights? They were threatening to sue me for access to the very children they had rejected? The sheer unmitigated gall, the hypocrisy, the cruelty. It was breathtaking. And then something inside me snapped. I started to laugh, not a small chuckle, but a loud, sharp, almost unhinged bark of laughter that startled them all. Mark's face twisted. "What's so damn funny?" Wiping tears of incredulous laughter from my eyes, I stared at them, truly seeing them for the pathetic, manipulative bullies they were. "Oh, you're serious?" I gasped between laughs. "You actually think, after everything you've done, that any judge in any courtroom is going to look at this situation and side with you?" Mom's lips pressed into a thin white line. "We have done nothing wrong, Megan." "Nothing wrong?" I repeated, stepping forward aggressively now, my voice rising. "You stole thousands of dollars from me using my credit card for years. You deliberately excluded my children from family holidays because you prefer my brother's kids. You tried to extort $80,000 from me for the privilege of being raised by you. And now, because I finally cut off your supply lines and refuse to tolerate your toxicity, you think you can bully your way back into my children's lives with baseless legal threats?" Dad's face darkened. "You don't want to do this, Megan. We'll drag this through the courts." "Oh, but I do want to do this," I interrupted, pulling out my phone and holding it up, hitting the record button on the voice memo app conspicuously. "In fact, I want you to think real carefully about what you do next," I said, my voice dropping to an icy calm, "because I have saved every text message, every voicemail, every email, the demand letter, Rachel's testimony about the credit card usage going back years. And I promise you, Robert, Carol, Mark, if you try to pursue this ridiculous fantasy of grandparents' rights, I will not hesitate to submit all of it as evidence of your character, your motivations, and your long-standing pattern of manipulation and financial exploitation. I will bury you in your own lies." Mark looked uncertain for the first time. My parents stared, momentarily stunned into silence by my ferocity. "You have no case," I continued relentlessly, pressing my advantage. "You know it, I know it. Your lawyer, if they have any competence, knows it. And if you keep pushing me, I will make damn sure that everyone you know, your church friends, your garden club, your business associates, sees exactly who you really are." A beat of charged silence hung in the chilly night air. Then, Mom's face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You're being unreasonable!" "No, Mom," I smiled coldly, feeling a surge of power I'd never known before. "I'm finally being smart." I stepped back inside my warm, happy home and grabbed the doorknob. "Happy New Year," I said sweetly, locking eyes with each of them one last time. Then, I slammed the door firmly in their shocked, furious faces. They never filed any lawsuit. They knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. In the weeks and months that followed, the silence from their end was absolute. No texts, no calls, no ambushes. It was as if they had vanished from my life. And for the first time, that silence felt like freedom, the crushing weight of their expectations, the endless cycle of guilt and manipulation, the constant striving for an approval that would never come. It was gone. Months later, sitting on my porch on a sunny spring afternoon, watching Chloe and Noah chase bubbles across the green lawn, Ben handed me a glass of iced tea and sat beside me. "It's been quiet," he remarked softly. I nodded, smiling contentedly. "Yeah, feels good." He smirked playfully. "Think they'll ever try again?" I sipped my drink, watching my children shriek with laughter as they popped the iridescent bubbles. Maybe. Maybe not. But it didn't matter anymore, because I had already won. I had my children, my real family, my peace, and I would never, ever again let anyone make them, or me, feel unwanted. Megan's story is a raw and powerful illustration of the devastating impact of parental favoritism and the long, difficult journey to breaking free from a toxic family system. The initial Thanksgiving exclusion, while hurtful, served as a catalyst, forcing Megan to confront a lifetime of being undervalued and manipulated compared to her favored brother Mark. Her parents' sense of entitlement, culminating in the discovery of the secret credit card usage and the absurd demand for reimbursement for her childhood, revealed the depth of their dysfunction. Each escalation, the guilt trips, the character assassination attempts, the ambushes, and the final desperate threat of a grandparents' rights lawsuit, only solidified Megan's resolve. This narrative highlights the painful reality that sometimes the people who should love us unconditionally are the sources of our deepest wounds. It underscores the importance of recognizing toxic patterns like favoritism, gaslighting, financial exploitation, and emotional blackmail. Megan's journey teaches valuable lessons about the necessity of setting firm boundaries, even when it means facing backlash or severing ties. Her ultimate victory wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her self-worth, protecting her children, and prioritizing the health and happiness of her chosen family unit, herself, Ben, Chloe, and Noah. By refusing to engage further, blocking communication, and calmly standing up to their final threat with documented evidence, Megan took back her power and found true freedom from a lifetime of manipulation. It reminds us that while breaking free can be incredibly difficult, the peace and self-respect gained are invaluable. Thank you for watching Megan's difficult but ultimately liberating story on Life Stories. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Share your thoughts and support respectfully in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your own path to peace. Remember, you deserve relationships based on mutual respect. Until next time.